Okay, can move this down a bit. There we go. Hello, hello. Good morning. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to Daily Art. Today is day 4,890 days in a row. Big number. I love that big number. It's fantastic. Today is also June 16th, Tuesday, 2026. For some reason, I like putting the date on this. Got my tea ready. See, in my cat mug. Love my cat mug. It actually says meow on the inside right there. Love my cats. And I'm ready. I'm ready to begin the block-in stage for this painting here that we're calling Flaring. F-L-A-R-I-N-G. Why you got to spell it, Chris? I don't know. There's my reference right up there. Pretty cool. Again, satinezillah.com, SATINEZILLAH.com for these references. This is their pack they call Tenebriism. So if you want to get that, I love, that website as far as like all the references and stuff. And this is hot off the heels of this painting, which I have up above. You can see it's the exact same size, 6x9, painted on paper. Hot press watercolor paper coated with a PVA size by Gamblin. I really enjoyed how this painting turned out. So I'm sticking with the same model, the same set of reference images from satinezillah.com. It's almost like Godzilla.com. And the way I started the last painting that I just showed was the same as I'm going to start this painting. Now, normally when I start a painting, ow, I just hit my knee. When I start a painting, I'll draw out on paper in graphite. So I'll do the whole drawing from beginning to end. Not sure why I said from beginning to end on that. Of course, I'll just draw out to get as much information in graphite on the paper as I can. And then after that, I would go in with the painting. But the last painting I did, I decided, you know what? I'm just going to coat the paper with PVA size right away, seal the paper up so it has less absorption to it. That's the reason to coat your paper with something so it doesn't constantly absorb the paint, and you'll get a different kind of coloration, different intensity in the paint when you have a non-absorbent surface. But on this one, and the last one, I didn't draw it out with graphite first. I drew it out with paint first, okay? And the paints that I'm using, I like to go over my materials because I expect people to ask about materials all the time, and that's okay. I don't mind constantly going over the same materials and telling you what I'm using because I do change up a lot. I'm working with traditional oil paint, and this is very inexpensive. Comparatively inexpensive. Winsor & Newton Winton brand, titanium white, yellow ochre, cadmium red light hue, or maybe it's just cadmium red hue. Let me check. Yeah, cadmium red light. Oh, it's not even a hue. It's cadmium red light. Does this actually have cadmium in it? For some reason, I was thinking that this did not have cadmium. I need to check that because I don't like working with heavy metals. But titanium white has things in it that is not good for you anyways. Ugh, I usually like to try and stay away from it, but I also want to use up these paints at the same time. Anyway. Ivory black. This is the Zorn palette, named after Anders Zorn, 18th century painter, or in the 1900s. It's been a palette that people have been using for, hundreds of years, but Anders Zorn is the one that kind of made it popular, I think. Because of all the beautiful paintings that Anders Zorn, Z-O-R-N, made, and all the possibilities that he was able to come up with just a simple limited palette, and how much it could actually do. I'm going to move this over a little bit so there's no shadow cast onto my paper. Okay, we're going to talk about the best way to block in your painting. Then now, what is a block in? What is a block in stage? Blocking in is, kind of after you get the drawing done, which I'm going to start on the drawing here while I'm talking, which will turn my voice into this kind of halting thing, because we have, you can see my reference up there. There is a portrait. It's a profile, and I don't want to screw it up. So the drawing is going to be based on a lot of straight lines. And after we get this drawn in, we're going to block in and get a lot of the colors and things established. The values, number 1, will be the very first thing that we establish after the drawing. And you can see how simple that can be, right? Is it exact? Probably not. Probably needs some changes within it, but we got a placement of the head. Am I working on all the details of the face and everything yet? No. Got a big placement of the body. This very quick kind of drawing into things. I'm not measuring, not looking at angles just yet, but getting a deeper understanding of bigger shapes. And now that I got a few marks on my canvas, paper specifically, I can begin to react to this and make decisions. For example, probably the easiest line to get to is this guy here. It goes right into the corner. This is the back of the figure. Goes up to, let's see, more than halfway. So here's the paper halfway. It goes up to here before we change an angle like that. And then the angle that I got of this line is pretty darn close, So that's probably the easiest line to grab. And that's one thing about oil painting, is a lot of times we don't know where to start. And we ask other artists, other people, where to start in oil painting, and they say, oh, always do it this way or always do it that way on your drawing. And I say no, because every subject is different. I think the best way to start an oil painting, at least the drawing of it, is to look at your subject and then figure out what is the easiest thing for me. It's specific to you, because some things that'll be easy for me will be difficult for you, and vice versa. But find those lines that that you can grab onto pretty easily. And I'm doing some measurement, 1, 2, 3, and maybe a half, maybe a little bit less than a half. I need my napkin. I don't use paper towels, I use napkins because they're already folded. So I was doing a measurement I want to get some exactness for the height of this head. So 1, 2, 3, and that's about right. I'm happy with that. I got that pretty close. I do think that this angle can end here, and then we go up into the hair, which has some simple angles. So I have the whole back of that figure established pretty closely. I think this angle may be a little bit off. It can drop down some, maybe to right there. And you notice I'm not using any mediums to draw this out. It's a very dry brush. Dry as in, I can do something like that, where it doesn't have a lot of paint, a lot of medium, 0 medium in it whatsoever, and just dealing with the paint right out of the tube. Depending on the paints that you have, the oil paints that you have, that will work well, or it won't work well. If you have, an oil paint brand like M. Graham that tends to move around a lot, has a lot of binder and oil already in it, it's almost too oily for me, you'll get longer strokes. It'll move around a lot better. I like Winsor & Newton. Winsor & Newton has a viscosity that's really in between you know, a very fluid paint and a very stiff paint. But if you're painting with like Gamblin, I mean, Gamblin's like super thick, and it would be very difficult to draw out everything within Gamblin because it's such a thick paint, right? Checking my stream real quick, making sure everything's going okay. And major shapes, big shapes. We want to get the big idea of this painting down, the figure down first. And I'm looking at bigger relationships, like, you know, here's halfway between, it goes up to about right there. And that's about where the fabric ends. We have this like angle of fabric, which is a big part of the expressiveness of this reference, halting language, because I'm thinking and painting at the same time. Definitely going to get better at that the more of these streams that I do. So that you can see just big shapes, big shapes. I'm not even thinking about the detail for this portrait yet. I do want to get like the muzzle of the face, like below the nose to the chin. I want to get that angle there. I'm going to ignore the nose and go from that muzzle all the way up to the forehead here. And then at some point, you know, the nose will kind of come out right around there somewhere. I need to get very exact on that once I get to it. And then we have an angle change here from right where that fabric hits, like right where the chin is and everything. Got a slight angle change because that's the deltoid underneath that fabric, and then another sharp angle change where the arm flows down. And it's at a sharper angle than I have. And then we end everything in this kind of bunch of fabric over here. And I'm going to intentionally kind of extend this out. That needs to come down a little bit. I'm going to extend it further out than it needs to be. I want more of a flow of all of those folds in the fabric. So I'm going a little bit longer. This would probably be closer to the portrait, you know, right where that all these folds end, but I want a bit more expression than that. So I'm going to move it out. And I know that this is part of the painting, part of the drawing of this figure, that I can move around and it won't look very weird. The expressiveness of these folds, get an idea just for direction there, where they meet. I'll get into all those details once after the block-in is done and everything. Now, that's pretty good. Got a really good idea of where everything needs to be, except for in the head. Let's get a little bit more exact. That's where the hair ends, right at the top of the head. And then we're going to define the back of the head with all that hair, and the front of the head. Just separate those two big ideas. Okay, just separate the idea of bigness here. I'm looking at angles, simple angles. You know, there's all these kind of bumps and indentations on the back and in all these things, and I'm just simplifying into one big straight line. If I can get like the big ideas of all these straight lines, like here, I know it goes bumpity, 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 bumpity all in the image, and then more bumpities, but I don't care about that. Just one straight line, the big idea of that whole thing. And I could probably, as I'm looking at it, maybe bring it out to there. Yeah, that feels more expressive. Also trying to push that expression in a little bit. This is how I'm moving away from the image, how I'm translating what I'm seeing and being creative with it, where I'm getting some kind of narrative that I want to express within this painting. It's not just copying the photo. It's doing a little bit more with it, or at least trying to. That's what we're going to attempt. Okay. Forehead goes in, nose comes out at this angle, maybe a little bit further down. Not very exact. He's still using a big brush. I mean, big in comparison. It's not really a huge brush. I mean, because I'm working on 6x9, so I don't, you know, a brush this small will feel pretty big. And then I want to, for me, I want to define where the front of the head transitions to the side of the head. And it's somewhat like that. Maybe it comes down to there. Cheek, brow, side of the head, eye socket, big shapes. Big shapes. Side of the nose. I don't even care about the lips. They're in there somewhere, but pretty close. Let me look at it on stream. Yeah. Pretty good, pretty good. I want to increase this angle a bit. Like curve. The most important thing, well, not the most important. I always say that. I always say everything is the most important. But what we want to do is, yeah, we have this reference image that's kind of telling us where to go, but we don't have to do it exactly. We never have to do it exactly. We could always, you know, have an opinion on what the image is telling us and then say, no, I want to adjust that in some way for a particular pathway that we've already chosen. And for me, that pathway is all in expressive mark making. So I'm thinking or trying to be a bit more expressive. And I'm thinking about the contours of these figures, this figure, the external contour of this figure. And I'm thinking, okay, this line is nice, but if I do something a little bit more at an angle, it would be more expressive. So let's think about it that way. And do I need to go in here and define, all of these folds? No, I really don't. I do need to be careful not to get, to keep it organic and not to go mechanical with these folds. What do I mean by that? We always have a tendency to space things out perfectly, like there's a fold here, and then there's a fold here, and then there's a fold here. Exact same size, same spacing in between each one. It's like a boring staccato, boom, 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 but that's not nature. Things, are bigger. This one's bigger with a smaller space, and that one's smaller, has different shapes. So anytime we get repetitive things in our paintings, like this fabric coming out, or if you're doing a landscape and you see like a line of trees, it's always a good example. And normally we would do like this sawtooth tree thing, right? Where it's all uniform and more mechanical than it is natural. That's us not really looking at what we're seeing and just being in our head and making this kind of mechanical understanding of the trees or the figure or the folds. But look a little bit further, keep it organic, stay away from those mechanical repetitions, because it does get boring. And especially when I define this, the purpose of this painting, that was last stream, where I defined the purpose of this painting, what I wanted to achieve within it. And I have the 4 points here. Why the heck do you want to do this painting is the question that I ask myself for every painting. Number one, I like the last painting with the folds and the high contrast lighting. So kind of repeating from the last painting. Expressiveness with the fabric and softness with the skin. So you can even see it in the reference. Very expressive fabric, but that skin turns softly, pushing that portrait back as well. Focus is the edge of light that is raking across the composition. So you can probably see from the composition or from the reference, like there's all this light in the back and then it rakes across and then down. That line of light, that's the big focus as far as where the light's going to be. And just like the last painting, I'm going to compress the value range. That's why I have a value range here to the left of my painting, because I'm going to choose where I'm going to go with that. It'll probably, like the last painting, I defined 3 to 8, but I ended up making the background even lighter, like around 7 or so, like around here. And then I made the light even lighter because I went really bright with it. So I can bring that back to show you again. Yeah, you can see where that's at. Like this is the darkest dark of the background. And it's, you know, right in between these two guys as far as value. Nowhere near black, which is way down here. You can't even see it. It's like off the bottom of the stream. But then the lighter areas, I went really close to white. Probably didn't hit direct white in places, which is nice. I thought I went all the way white on it, which is nice. I thought I went all the way to white right out of the tube, but I didn't. So this, I think this is enough drawing. Maybe a couple more things I can put down. No, this is enough drawing. I can get what I need. I'm going to go through it, make sure. Yeah, I can get what I need out of all this. This is all I need. You know what I wasn't doing, though, that now that I'm thinking about it is like, you know, all the brightest brights are going to be up in here, right? I did coat that, right? My goodness, it's soaking in. Maybe I didn't coat it well enough and it's soaking in some of that paper. But all the lightest lights here are now going to have that kind of burnt umber mixture that I mixed up. So can't really scrape back to white, which I like doing in a lot of places. I didn't think about that, but it'll be okay. It'll be fine. I'll have some of that in there. Won't be able to get all the way back to the white. So we'll use the lightest light that we have, titanium white with a little bit of yellow ochre to get those super bright brights there. Okay. That's what we're going to do. Now, the best thing, what I like to do on certain paintings, as far as the block-in, we're going to get into the block-in stage now, which means we're going to cover up as much of the canvas as we need, this paper as we need to get close to the coloration of what we see up there. It's a very neutral painting, okay? There's not a lot of really high saturated colors. Compare the red and the yellow ochre that you see on the palette to my reference. You'll see that it's a lot grayer, a lot neutralized, much different than that. So obviously, not obviously, I hate that word. Stop using that word. It's not obvious. Nothing's ever obvious. I do need to make sure that anytime I pull, you know, the red or the yellow ochre out, that it's going to be mixed with something. It has to be mixed with something because those are too saturated to my reference. I want to keep it warm, not to do so much saturation. So I know that. It's going to be a lot of grays. And I know that I want a separation between the background and the foreground, the background and the figure and everything here. And like I did on the last painting, I kept the background into very neutral grays, which, you know, you want to see neutral grays. That's the value chart here. It's nothing but ivory, black, and white. That's as blue neutral as I can get. On the cooler tones, hey, there's Lewis. Hi, Lewis. Do you think a video comparing different blacks mixed with white and yellow would be useful? I don't know. That's kind of a question for you. Are you asking that question? Because it's very specific. Do you think a video comparing different blacks mixed with white and yellow? Like how to get a very, I mean, I did a painting like that, and actually, let me ask you a question. What would that achieve? Like, what is the purpose specifically of the yellow in there? Because different blacks mixed with white, you'll get, you know, cool to warm, but still very neutral. But why yellow? What if you made that video? Or if you tried that, what would you want to kind of understand about that color mixture? And speaking of color mixture and neutrals, we're going to do a neutral in the background, a very cool neutral in the background, cool as in close to blues, but I don't have any blue on my palette. All I have is ivory, black, and white. So these two together are my bluest blue. And the way you want to look at a limited palette like the Zorn palette is it is your primaries. It's yellow, red, blue. Okay. So if you had red, yellow, and blue plus white. You could make any color in the world. There would just be a lot of mixing, right, on that. But if you look at, this is my yellow ochre obviously is, I always use that. This is my red, my cadmium red, okay, and my blue is my black. So a little bit of white, and I have the bluest color I can get. Definitely not a palette where you want to try and paint like the super blue sky out in nature. This is going to be a palette that's meant for certain subject matter. So if you're out in nature and you're like, oh, I want to do a landscape painting with a super blue sky, Zorn palette's not for you. Or yes, Zorn palette is for you, and you just add in like an ultramarine blue. I'm not sure what the difference is. I've noticed that white and yellow are most significant, specifically the yellow, because of blue blacks versus brown blacks would make a difference in green. Interesting. So you have black and yellow. Depending on what black you have, because it would be very different from an ivory black, which is a very warm black, to a Payne's gray, which is considered a black. It's as dark as ivory black as far as value, but it's very blue as well. You would get a lot of differences in the variation between those blacks when adding a yellow to it. And it really depends on what yellow you mean, like a yellow ochre or a very, like a cadmium yellow, that kind of thing. But you could get, like you said, things that would go towards a brownish color. Actually would all be pretty green, honestly, because an ivory black mixed with a yellow ochre, and especially like a lemon yellow, you're going to get closer to a green. Definitely. Haven't used Mars black a lot, or lamp black, so I'm not sure on those two. All right, let's get that value right on the background. I want to be a little bit darker still. Right around here. What number is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, right around an 8. I always say this, if you make up a value scale, use it. Paint on it. That's the purpose of it. It takes literally like 10 minutes to make a value scale like this. The purpose is to paint on it. Don't treat it as this finished piece of artwork where you don't use it by painting on it and comparing your values. The purpose of it is to paint on it. And now I'm going to wash in this background. I'm going to keep it like a scumble. Scumble is like with a very dry brush, no medium, not a ton of paint. So you get that kind of scratchy feel when you move your brush over it. I use nothing but synthetic brushes, not like a hog's hair brush, because I do have them. Like if I pull out this hog's hair bristle, it'll be very scratchy and it'll pull more paint off than it puts on. And I like that in a lot of ways, to keep things thin, especially at the beginning, or to put down really thick impasto. Really fun way to kind of really push paint around with these really like stiff bristles. And I can even take some of that gray and kind of brush it into there. These places that I'll probably keep gray and dark, maybe blend in that area down there because it's so far away from the focal point. Okay, you say specifically the yellow because of blue blacks versus brown blacks would make a difference in green. Well, like I said, you wouldn't get brown blacks. It would be blue blacks and green blacks if it was just white, black, and yellow, all the blacks. Also, red and blue won't make as much of a difference as yellow because they are both usually very dark. Yeah, depending if you add white to it, I can agree with that in some ways, yeah. By the way, I love mixing blacks and yellows for landscapes. Yeah, very neutralized kind of greens throughout that, depending on the yellow that you're using. But, I don't know where the brown blacks would come from within that. Depends on the black. You just reminded me when talking color charts, if you get a book and are afraid of messing it up, get 2. Yeah. Yeah. Buy the second book, and that's the one that stays on the shelf and you don't open it, like comic books. But the other ones, you bend and dog ear and all the other kind of stuff. It sounds, my partner would do that. they would definitely make sure that they're super careful with all the books. Okay, so this is my darkest dark. I've established my darkest dark. It's here on the palette. Okay, so when I put down a little bit of black here to mix in with something else, I can come over here and I can kind of get it close to the darkest dark I have, see it's a lot darker, and then, you know, bring it up in value. You don't have to use white to bring everything up in value. You could use different colors, like all three of these colors would bring that up in value in some way. It depends on where you want to go with it. If you want to stay very cool with it, then, you know, white. If you want to go warm with it, then add your 2 yellows or reds, that kind of thing. So what I'm doing is I'm going to stay here within this value range. I'm going to add a little bit of white to it, but I'm not going to use this brush because I want that brush to be my background brush. I want to add some of this brown to it because I'm thinking about the darkest darks here on the back of the figure. And those darkest darks for the figure are still going to be around the same value as the background. We're just going to warm them up a lot. Definitely. And then just quickly block this in. We're in our block in stage here. We're not thinking about details. We want to keep ourselves away from details. If we find ourselves getting in there, getting a smaller brush, you know, this is not the stage for that, right? If we get too deep into details at the beginning and thinking about the specifics, our painting can go way off the rails, or at least that area can go way off the rails. You wouldn't know it until you put in the rest of it. So darkest dark still, I want to make this a bit warm. And then the head, this face here. How much information do we need there? Next to 0. The focal point on this painting is not this face. We don't have to make that important. Just big area of dark color, okay? And that's pretty close to like a burnt umber. So ivory black, red, and yellow ochre. I've seen Cassel Earth be considered a brown black. I have never heard of that color. Cassel Earth. Wow. AKA Van Dyke Brown. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a brown. Definitely. Oh, thanks for showing up and asking some questions, Lewis. Appreciate it. Just jumped in and left. No, that's good. Sounds good. Van Dyke Brown, Cassel Earth. Never worked with it. Sounds like a very dark brown, be close to black. The purpose for using it, I'm guessing, would to have like a brownish black. Maybe it's closer to like a raw umber that's more neutral, a very neutral brown, that kind of thing. Not sure. Now, we have warm here because we're dealing with a figure, Caucasian figure, right? So it's going to be more into the reds, all up in here. These shadow areas I'm defining. You notice I'm defining the shadow areas first. If you want to understand form of everything quickly, define those the darker areas first. Leave the light areas the white of your surface. Now, the hair, I want to bring the hair in, which is still a very cool color, like the background. So I'm going to remove the separation between the two. All of that hair is going to turn into the same background color. Now, there's multiple reasons why I'm doing this. Number one, it does have a very similar, when I squint down, a very similar value to the background, but it also has a very similar color, hue. Cool, right? And third reason why I'm doing that is because that's not the focus. I want to push the head back as far as I can. So a lot of blending, a lot of softness, things like that is going to help push that back. So more red within the body, very gray within the background, but I want to bring all of this fabric forward as well with a warm color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up the same kind of mixture as our background with the same value range. Yeah, pretty much the same paint, but then I'm going to go for yellow ochre with it and lighten it up a bit more as well. And you can see just on my palette, we started with this gray, we went reddish warm, and now into the yellow ochre, a bit more yellowish green, very neutral yellowish green, right? And this is going to be the block-in for all of my fabric. So there's a separation between everything within hue. Hue is the color name of things. So red, brown, green, yellow, blue. So the hues are different. There's a different separation between these objects through that hue. And that's intentional. I'm doing this intentionally. I want them separated, but also in a specific way. Like this is definitely close to gray, not completely gray, because I want it warmer than the background so it comes forward. Warm colors tend to come forward. Cool colors tend to move in the background. Warm meaning yellow and red. Cool meaning things close to blues, whites, grays, you know, bluish grays, you know, those kind of things. Greens. Those are all cool. Very cool colors. So cool. Cool as in temperature. Okay. Now, that's all I need. You know, it's you're like, oh my God, what a mess. What a mess. It's just throwing paint around. I mean, look at all these spaces where you can see all the paper showing through, Chris. I mean, I can't deal with that. Why are you doing it that way? Because that's all we need. We need a quick block in that gives us an understanding of what's going on. Actually, and I want to try something here. I want to see how far back to the paper I can get on that. And this is telling me right away that I definitely coated this with PVA size, but I did not put a lot of it on there. So the paper is soaking up a bit more than normal. And that's okay. That's okay. Because I've painted like that for years. I can deal with that. Not a problem. So I'm going to get a different brush. Also a big brush because we're going to work on, oh, this is a good brush, Rosemary and Company brush. We're going to work on the back here. So we're still going to do the same thing we've done before. I'm going to mix up a gray first, neutral, and then we're going to go even more red. Very warm. I mean, this back is really warm. Always going to have some of that yellow ochre in there too. And then we're going to lighten it up a lot. Lightening it up a lot. You know, the thing about a limited palette, as far as, you know, limitation as far as colors, is you will almost always mix all those colors for every mixture you have all the time. You know, if I'm making a straight up gray, it's just black and white. But for that color, like the skin tone, it was all colors, just different amounts of each color to make that. So there's always that possibility. But, you know, limited palettes don't always mean limited color range, like your ability to mix color ranges. I mean, for example, if you got like a process yellow, process red, and a process blue. These are, you know, when I say process colors, they're like colors that printers would use on these huge printers to print like flyers and everything that you have. Like even closer than that, you do a CMYK, which would be cyan, yellow, magenta. Those are like your process colors, basically red, yellow, blue, right? Plus white and a black. And you can make anything on the planet because that's exactly what's in your color printer at home. And you can print out any color picture on Earth with just those quote unquote limited colors. So even though they're limited in number, they're unlimited in how much they can do, how many colors they can make. So that's pretty interesting to think about. So even though this is limited, a limited Zorn palette, in the amount of numbers that it can make. Doesn't mean it's this actually is limited in the amount of colors that you can make. There's the whole chart there. But it's a bit more harmonious. The thing, if you got a process yellow or CMYK, if you were painting with CMYK, because I did this years and years ago, there's two problems you'll have with that. Maybe more problems you'll have with that. But two major problems you'll have with that. Number one, if you had just a CMYK plus a white and a black, you would be on your palette mixing constantly all the time. It's just like constant mixtures. You would use all colors all the time for almost every mixture, and you would mix to try and get the actual color that you'd want. And everything would be about neutralizing your color, getting closer to gray. Everything would be about that because you have nothing but these like super high saturated colors. And yeah, it would be an interesting way to understand color and work through it, but tons of mixing. The other thing that you would do is especially if you didn't understand color really well, is you could make your painting so incongruent and unharmonious that you would have just colors everywhere that would just look like really bad notes, because you have that ability to make every color on the planet with all of, just those 5 colors of CMYK. But not only would it be very difficult to manage it, keep it harmonious, but you would be mixing all the time. So there's not a huge advantage to choosing a palette for the sole reason that you want to be able to just make any color on the planet. I want a palette that does everything. It's not an advantage to think that way. It's a hindrance. It's a complexity, an extra complexity that would just make oil painting a lot harder. I think, in my opinion, definitely it's an opinion, right? That we're better off if we start limited and we begin to understand like just the simple interactions with like a 4-color palette, and then add into that palette what we need when we need it. So if I need a blue, if I need like a very bluish kind of color, I'll add like an ultramarine to this palette. And if I need like a green, a very high saturated green, I'll have the ultramarine plus like a lemon yellow or something like that. Yeah. If I want to go crazy off the wall, I could like add some random color, to do that. If I wanted a very purplish color, I could add alizarin crimson, right, to the current palette. So adding additions to it based on the painting that you need to make. And I think that's important. Start out simply, understand the minimal amount of colors, and then increase in complexity when you need it, right? I mean, I've done landscape paintings with this. I have, and just been okay with all the blues of the sky and the water to turn into a gray. And they don't look too bad. It is not super bright. We're not going like crazy Van Gogh and things on it, but it is very harmonious. It's a very harmonious palette. And it isn't like this is like an exclusive thing where you say, I'm just going to use these 4 colors and nothing else because I'm going hardcore. No, even Zorn that created this palette or made it more popular, he would add a blue and a green and a alizarin whenever he needed it, to tell the story that he wanted to tell within his painting. Is that the right brush? Okay, yeah. So here's the block in. That's the simple. Don't need much more than that. I'm going to attempt to do this. I think that's going to be too light. I don't want to bring that value up. And that's the important thing. See, what we're thinking about here is value first. Value is the big proponent for creating form, creating an understanding of where the painting's going to go, getting the value close to where you want first, getting your colors into like this kind of temperature area, warm and cool within those values, and getting your drawing pretty close as well. Big blocks of color and things like that. And then from here, we can do several things. We can go straight, we can enjoy the expressiveness of all this brushwork with the hard edges and some soft edges in a lot of places. There's more hard than soft in a lot of places. We can enjoy this and just go straight in with detail and begin responding to what's down and changing what's down to be a bit closer to our subject matter. Or there's another thing we can do, which I'm going to play around with right now. And I need a specific brush for it. And this is kind of fun. Sometimes I do this. Let's see how it goes. I can, because oil paint, it's wet, I can take a dry brush that I haven't used yet, something very soft like this bigger synthetic brush, and I can go through and soften out, like I'm barely touching the canvas with this. It's like just barely hitting the top edges of the paint with the very end of that brush. And I'm going to soften out everything. Going to soften it out, remove as much of those edges as possible. And I'm just kind of hitting the paint that's on there. And there's not a lot of paint on there right now. So, you know, if I had a big impasto chunk in places, I'd have to be even more careful with this, because it could pick up that impasto and really move it around. But because it's pretty light, you know, thin as far as the paint is on there, I can press a little bit harder and soften, 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 soften. And now, why would you do this? Why is this an interesting or helpful method? Well, what this is going to do, and you're probably already noticing it, you're definitely probably already noticing it, is it's removing all of those hard edges that we've put down with this block in. It's softening everything out. All those hard edges are not grabbing our attention anymore. You just scrub into there. I can even get into these lighter areas that are supposed to be in shadow and just kind of move it around. I am changing the color. Everything's getting a little bit grayer. But when we soften this out, it's exactly like if we were squinting down with our eyes, or we unfocus the camera and we're looking at the bigger shapes, the bigger ideas of this painting. All those hard edges really kind of distract us away from those bigger ideas. And we can use this softness to understand our values, our drawing, our temperature, and get a deeper understanding of where it's headed right away, and then make some changes based on that. So the very first thing I see is we got kind of a humpback thing going on here, right, as far as the drawing. So bring that down. Ooh, I probably went too far down with that. Yeah, a little bit. Just subtle changes there. Nope, not that brush. This brush. I have a different brush for every section of the painting right now. Keeping it soft, okay? And then I have that one brush that has almost no paint on it for softening things out. So that helped me understand some changes within that drawing that I wanted. I like how this value here can just go away. It's unnecessary. You know, when comparing it with my reference up top there, you can see how those kind of blend in together. I can push that further, blend them in further. All right. Definitely have an understanding of the lightest light being here. I know that I can bring that up a lot more. Let's see how far I can bring that up with several techniques. Let's try scraping out and see how far that will bring up. Look at that. Look at that white, that like brighter white that I can get just by scraping into the painting. I increased, you know, the hard edge there tremendously. Can soften that out again. And I'm thinking about the drawing of these folds now, getting closer to exactness on the drawing as well. Okay. When you're painting, you're always drawing. If you are in here with a palette knife or a paintbrush or whatever you're in here with, you have to think about, okay, am I putting it down in the right place? Is what I'm doing in the right place? If that's important to you. I mean, if you're doing, very abstract expressionism, it's probably not very important to you where exactly you put the paint down. But for me, big chunks of areas here, it's got to be at least those big chunks in a good place. Okay. Look at the difference in that. I mean, that changed tremendously. Again, here with the top edge of the shoulder, got to get this drawing good. Good. Got to do it good. What does that mean, Chris? Doing it good. Accuracy as far as placement. And the bigger shape of where that shoulder begins and ends underneath, the major angle there. And then how it flows into the back of the figure. That placement there. There's a highlight here on the top of the scapula as well. And yeah, this edge here, super sharp. You can kind of soften it with the palette knife a little bit. If you've never worked in a palette knife, it's wonderful for getting some fun edges all over the place. You get some really interesting edges with a palette knife. I would suggest to play around with a palette knife, learn how to use it, really get in there and be exact with it. Check out Greg Manchess, Manchess, Illustrator Hall of Fame. I did some mentoring with him, and he paints in palette knife a lot. So looking at this, I definitely brought up the lightest light. I like the texture that I brought into that. I want to soften out some of it just a little bit. Some of this may show through at the end of the painting, or I may paint over the whole thing. But I love trying to, add in some initial strokes like this that are expressive and see how much of that I can keep all the way through the painting. Maybe it'll be good. Maybe it won't be bad. That's a great thing about oil paint, is because it stays wet for so long. We can do that. Now, other things that I see. Now, the lightest light, pretty good. I like the placement of it. Is the drawing exact on that shoulder? Probably not, but it's okay. Other things I see is definitely that face. Like when I squint down and I'm looking at the reference and I'm looking at it on my screen on the stream, just like you're looking at it. When I look at that and I squint down, the face almost devolves into nothing. The face becomes, a value just a tiny bit lighter than the background. But the big separation between that is the warmth in it. So I like the warmth in it between these two, but I want to push the value down. A little bit of black, that red. Still keeping everything, all of this brushwork, very dry. Not a lot of paint. Not putting a lot of paint down yet. Let's go warmer with it. More red. Got to be careful with the burnt umber, not the burnt umber, yellow ochre, because that will also lighten up that mixture too. And let's do this. Let's remove some more of the edging up there and soften it out. So this head, I want it a bit darker. So black and red. So saturated, a bit saturated, but darker as well, especially right here on the cheek, right there. And I want that to go into the gray and remove that harsher line between the face and the hair. Why am I doing that? Why am I removing those lines? Why am I softening this out? Because I want to push it back. I want to push it back as far as I can. Again, like I said before, this painting is not about that portrait. I do want it there. I want it to say as simply as possible, here is a profile of this figure, and that you can tell it's a profile of the figure, and that's it. And at the same time, I don't want it to be distracting, where it looks off in some way, like the drawing is off in some way, so that there's a question about, is that a face or not? Is the person a bit deformed? I don't know. So, and this is a lot of what I'm trying to play with or trying to figure out in these paintings, is how to find that balance between expressive mark making, expressive brushwork, right? But keep that accuracy so it still is like a face that's simply done, but still that it says enough to what it wants to say. And I'm going deep into it now. Just really marked that whole nose out. I think that's better. And you can see, in the back here, like if you look, maybe you can see how the hair separates from the background. That value is so close. It's easy for me to say, no, I don't need it, and just remove it. Okay, just make those values so close. Did that succeed in pushing the head back and bringing everything else forward? I think so. I'm also playing with this kind of halo effect where some of that white, when we went through and with a soft brush and softened everything out, there's like this kind of glow in between the background where the little bit of that white's kind of gumming through. You see that? See how gorgeous that is? Yeah, I want to keep some of that. But there's this hard edge right here between the neck. And I want to soften that out a bit as well. Try and keep that glow as well. Hard to do. The subtlety there. So I'm getting to the point, slowly sneaking up on it, where big in general, to, okay, we're getting closer to ideas of value and color, saturation, drawing, edges. We're sneaking up on it a little bit at a time. And we're not just painting here. We're not just, let's go at it and just look at that and try and copy back and forth. No, we're thinking about the what we set up as the important ideas of this painting, and everything that we do on the painting, every movement that we make, every brush stroke that we put down, every breath you take, right? We're thinking about Sting. Jeez, Chris. Every move that I make on here, every brushstroke I put down, I'm thinking, does this get me closer to that original idea within the painting? Or does it move me away from that? Is it pulling away from my original idea? And that presupposes that you've had your purpose, you wrote it out, you know what's happening with this painting. And like I said before on yesterday's stream video when I was talking about this, is how important setting all that up is at the very beginning, because it will give you a direction throughout the rest of your painting. And now we're seeing where that direction is coming in. We can see how expressiveness, like that word, can transfer into brushwork. We can see how defining our focal point can tell us to soften edges in certain areas or remove saturation in certain areas to create a painting where the focal point shines and everything else kind of falls back in the background. But we need that definition at the beginning. We need to say, this is what we're going to do with this painting. This is why I'm going to do it with this painting. I'm pushing outside of my comfort zone in these ways. All of that at the beginning. It doesn't take long, maybe 30, 45 minutes to define that. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is such a process that you're going through. Can I just start a painting without all of that? Of course you can. I'm just giving you a way to do things. I don't do it like this all the time. There's been times when I'll just jump into a painting, right? And I'm like, you know what? I just want to go. I just want to paint. I love this reference. I love what I'm looking at, and I'm just going to paint. I don't want to think about it. Don't want to go too deep into all the information or plan it out too much. I just want to be expressive, and that's fine too. Totally good. What I'm trying to do here is like kind of soften this around here and darken it up in ways to get a more natural transition, more closer to the reference, exactly how the transition down here goes up into the side of the back. And then there's going to be this constant painting from foreground to background, foreground to background. So you'll put in the foreground, you'll put in the figure, and then you'll clean up some edges with the background. Get used to painting your foreground into your background. Too often I'll see artists working on a painting and they're so, it's maybe at their beginning stage of doing a lot of things, and they're so kind of connected or can't separate themselves from the image yet, where they can't really be expressive, and they're like, oh, that line needs to be exactly there. The drawing's going to be wrong. And then, oh my gosh, I went over, got to paint the background to the side of it. And they're always going right up to the edge. And what that results in is not a bad painting, but a painting where all the edges are very hard. And I don't want to do that right now. I'm keeping everything soft. So painting the foreground into the background. And especially when the values get so close or exact, go ahead and be expressive with it and lose that edge completely. Make it a lost edge. Lost edges are when, they just kind of fade into nothing, just like right there. And you can see that in the reference where it fades out right there. I've already mixed up all my brushes now. I forget which one is supposed to be which color, but that's okay. That's the good thing about having a very harmonious palette is you can move through those changes, and you're not going to mess up everything easily. So what I'm doing now is there's this big space here of paint that's very light, but it's not really representative of how dark it gets here within the reference, and then it lightens up in these areas. So I want to darken up some of this where those shadows are in the fabric. Yet I want to keep that idea of compressing my value range. The darkest dark is going to be that gray that I made up right at the very beginning, the gray of the background. These are just as dark, maybe a little bit lighter. So if I put this in here, I'm going to shape my brush as I do this. If I put this value in here, is it going to be darker? Yes, it is. It is darker, but is it darker than our darkest dark? No, it's right up in there, which is good. When you compress your value range, there's a level of subtlety that comes in where you're working in a much smaller range of value. And some things get lost, like in those half tones, like those values would get completely lost, and you just merge them together. And it makes for a more cohesive painting in some ways, sometimes. And you focus on simplification, focus on the bigger ideas. I don't want to lose all that I've done there with that brush work. So I'm putting down a brush stroke and then kind of blending it in by going stroke, 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 and keeping it like pushing harder here and then lighter, 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 like the pressure. You can see how it kind of fades that in. I'll do it again down here because there's a big shape here, like triangular shape of a fold. And we start dark. Let me see, let me get some of that. Get that drawing, and we start dark here, so more paint. It gets a little bit larger. And then at one point, the value starts getting lighter. So I'm mixing with the paint that's already there, and I'm pressing lighter as well. You can see how we can fade that in very simply, very easily. And it takes a conscious effort of looking at what we're trying to do, planning that out and going, okay, this is a small area, but this is what I want to do with that area. It's a bit more exact. It takes a lot more thought, but at the same time, what it's doing is allowing you to move faster as a painter. Like, how can I get that done with as little work as possible? Putting in simply and easily. That'll make a more cohesive, more interesting painting that won't look labored, right? It's something we want to stay away from, is this kind of labored idea of painting. And of course, it takes time if you're first starting out with oil painting. Things are going to look labored because they are. You're laboring with how to actually speak with your brush about what you're looking at. That's totally fine. I want some more warm color in there, more reddish color. But here I'm thinking about, I'm really looking at these folds now, exactly where they're placed, and thinking more value, like I said before, value first. Is it lighter or darker? And then after that, I'm thinking temperature, warmer or cooler. And then when you think cooler, you'd only have so many places to go with this palette. It's like a gray. You go to black and white, closer to that. And then warmer, you have two ways to go: warmer red, warmer yellow. You can see how those ideas of like holding that simplicity while you're painting, it makes things a lot easier. Like it gives you, with a limited palette, only so many places you can go with it to describe what you're looking at. So it makes things simple. I'm working with a limited palette because I want things easier for me. I'm cheating, totally cheating with limited palette. But if I had this palette with like 13 or 15 different colors on it, I could say, okay, I want this warmer, but do I want to go cadmium red warmer or alizarin crimson warmer or phenachrome or whatever it is, red warmer or cadmium red deep warmer, or all these other reds that I could use that I have on my palette, and it becomes confusing. And then you have to make all these crazy decisions based on just making a tiny movement within your painting. Now, there's artists out there that have these huge palettes. They've worked with them for years and they know them like the back of their hand, and they can do that. Can we do it at the very beginning? No, we can't. We definitely can't. And if we're so naive that we think that we could, then I think that I could work with that palette, like this huge palette, without years of understanding. That's in the wrong place, I think. I would be very naive in thinking that. Okay. I really like how, I believe this is like some part of the back. I forget what that muscle's called, but it gets darker here. Oof. How dark is that? Yeah, that's right around my darkest dark. Okay, we'll go with it. See how different that is? It's just like a beacon. It just says, look at me. Look at this part of the back. Oh my gosh. Let's go with it down here as well. That's what I love about like a neutralized tonal way of painting with a limited palette is, one little change like that, value change or saturation change, And it can make a big statement within all of the colors that we put down. All of the neutral things that we put down is so subtle, and it's whispering, and it would just take, a very small movement, small change to make a really big statement in places. Like this reflected orangey yellow that's right there. The painting isn't about that, so I have to be careful. I want it there, but I want to be careful about it. Yeah, those reflected colors, man. That's where you put skin next to skin, like you have like light hitting, your hand and then reflecting on your face or something like that. And that's going to be the next painting I'm going to do, because I already have that reference ready with reflected light, and it just gets so saturated and beautiful. These big movement into saturation. Oh, that's not working out well at all. Wanted to just soften that edge a little bit. I did not pick the right brush for it. The right brush, the correct brush, is going to be a very soft brush that's splayed out a bit, like this guy. Not only is it synthetic, but it's long, super soft, and splayed out, and it doesn't have any paint in it whatsoever, so it's going to pick up some paint, but most definitely it's going to soften out some things a lot easier. Like if you want to soften out like your brushwork a lot, you can go and buy one of those makeup brushes, for putting on, I don't know about makeup, but putting on a blush or something. But they're these really floofy brushes, just a million hairs, super soft, and you can really soften out some brush strokes that way. Makeup brushes, that's where it's at. And a lot of them you can get for super cheap, very inexpensive. But you got to be careful. I mean, how soft do you really want to make those edges? What are you saying with that? What's the purpose behind it? Okay, I got a little bit into that when I didn't need to, because I was focusing on this. And now I'm looking, this is very flat here. I'm liking the general idea within that fabric. I think that's good. But this back just looks like a hunk of something. So what does it need? What does it need? I can see that right here from the reference, it goes gray right there. Bit more gray, darker, gets a little bit lighter, and then on the edge it darkens out really quickly. So that would turn the form a bit better. Like there's like this, I mean, if we think about the back in at least with this figure right now, if we think about this back as like the back of the figure, then the side of the figure, we have this line here that describes the back. Then of course it goes up here like that. That's where the shoulder is. We have the spine, which is we know as far as anatomy, that's right in the center of the back. But then we definitely have like scapula here, and then right, I would say where the back kind of ends in this area. And then from then on, went into this paint, this is the side of the back. So we have that kind of transition. And what this is not saying here, what this back is not saying, is that transition. It's not telling me this is the front of the back or the back of the back, and this is the side of the back. There's, of course, we're not made like boxes right there, but there is an edge. It's a very soft edge there. And we can see that with just a very subtle changes. There's actually maybe that's the erector spinae, maybe, I don't know. These two muscles that go along the side of the spinal cord. It's like right there. I'm painting into this because I know I can bring it back. I can bring the back, bringing sexy back, right? I know I can bring it back, but I want to understand the form of this back and how it moves through space first. And if I have to block it in this way to get a better understanding, that's going to inform everything else that I need on this painting, or at least the back part of this painting, the back part of this figure. It's getting confusing talking about backs in several different ways. Okay. There's a lot of drawing in here. There's a lot of thought about form. What do I mean when I say form? When I say form, I think I lost that edge up here. Form is how a three-dimensional object passes through space, and in gaining a deeper understanding in your head, so that when you're painting a head or something like that, like if you look at me right here with like in a 3/4 view, and I'll zoom in, you can see where it's like the front of the head here, and then right there we transition. Right here we transition from front of the head, which is all this, and then into side of the head. But feeling that transition, it does, like super front of the forehead, then we curve down and then go boof, way back. Like feeling that idea while you're drawing that I'm here and then I'm flowing this way and then way back, That's how we can deeply understand form, when we can feel that transition in our head. We're building this mental model of how form transitions in your head. And it takes a while to do that. It's a lot of working with simplification of forms. Look up Andrew Loomis and the Loomis head. I love how Andrew Loomis simplifies the head. And we're thinking that way. And so this is what I'm trying to do with the back here. I need to stop and kind of understand that. Yes, I'm still working on drawing as well. Drawing is a big part of this. Always got to come back to that. There's so much complexity in art making. It's so interesting. We hold multiple things in our head all the time. Every artist, don't matter what you're doing. You could be doing abstract expressionism. You could be doing blind contour, but there's multiple things that we're constantly holding in our head at the same time. And now I'm thinking about this edge and the drawing that is within this. I'm trying to bring this drawing back a bit, because I think up here is looking a bit weird. And I think one of the best things that we can do as painters is to try as hard as we can, like, to not feel so precious about every movement that we've made through the painting, where we don't want to screw it up and do it over, right? Oh, I worked really hard on that shoulder, okay? Or I worked really hard on that eye, or this side of the head, but it's off, and I don't want to go back into it and try and redo it, because I have to redo the background, the whole side of the head, all that stuff. No, we want to get away from that idea and say, I am committed to this painting, and if it needs me to stop and redo a portion of it, then that's what it needs. That's what we need to do. If we need to be brave and to simplify back to the necessary parts of it in order to move forward with it, then we need to do that. Don't be lazy. And part of the reason why this block-in is so important is because, and that looks terrible so far, that part of the back. No, doesn't look right. But part of the reason, the purpose for this block-in is for you to get these general ideas simply and easily with just a few strokes of paint, Very thin paint on there so you can figure out these bigger ideas of shapes and things like that. That way you don't have to redo or undo a big portions of what you're drawing or painting. See, I have to think about where, right where the top of this starts. We got the shoulder comes up, that angle there, and then we drop down the other shoulder of the back. And how does it compare horizontally to here? That's pretty close. And then we kind of flow all the way down. It's not looking right for some reason. Maybe, let's see, let's check some angles. I know this edge is, like this corner is really sharp. Now I've moved that corner. What I don't want to do is leave this right now to dry because it'll probably be mostly dry by tomorrow. I'm definitely not finishing this painting today. It's not happening. Tomorrow is when I finish this painting, but I want to get this back figured out so that it looks like a back enough to where it's not distracting away from the rest of the painting. And it's all about drawing right now. It's all about that contour, that whole contour. I think. I'm pretty sure it's just the contour. It could be how I treat the form within the back itself, how that form transitions, but I feel like the drawing of this contour is just a bit off. Yeah, see, I'm lightening that up a bit, making sure that that angle is right on. I'm going to move. I'm not sure if I'm in front of the camera, but I need to get in front of the camera to get this right. Need to get it right. There's people watching. People watching that are looking at this and going, no, do the angle that way. No, the wrong way. I would like if someone's actually watching this and yelling at the screen. That would mean that it's exciting. It isn't like watching paint dry. Which unfortunately is mostly what like watching painters work is like. It's just kind of boring in a lot of ways. Here, I mean, my life is on the line. I am like freaking out. Like this is, when you're doing it, it's the most nerve-wracking and crazy thing ever. But when you're watching it, you're like, yeah, whatever. What is going on with that back? It's this transition here. That transition. I need a better value. It's going to end like right here, right where it's at. Yes. Okay. I like that. But it needs to come up a bit more, right at that, like the shoulder corner, I think is like right there. And then an even more subtle movement up that way. I will paint this back 20 times to get it right. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to paint it 20 times. I'll paint it 2 times and then give up and go cry. Start a new painting. Yeah, that's me. That's me. Kidding. No, that's not me. But I'm going to give it as much as I can to try and get it where it needs to go. Curves down, a little bit in there, but we also have the fading of the value. It gets darker and darker and darker. So that subtlety of that form, dealing with the drawing, and then included within that is the transition and value. It's like so subtle. So you work on one, trying to transition that value from lighter to darker in a very subtle way. And as you're doing that, you screw up the drawing a little bit. And then you're like, oh, let me go back to fixing the drawing. And then you screw up the value. And what it ends up is you start realizing, like, I need to get this done within one single stroke, like right away, just as expressive and simple as possible, just bam, or else it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I need to be like John Singer Sargent here, you know, putting a stroke down, hating it, scraping it off the canvas, putting the stroke down, hating it, scraping it off the canvas, do that 26 times. And then on the 26th stroke, after you've practiced it 25 times, it's right, it looks good, and you're done. And then you move on to the next stroke of thousands. Wow, Chris, that explanation makes me not want to paint. That's how painting can go sometimes. It can be the most demoralizing and crazy thing ever. Isn't that right, Bubby? This is my Bubby, my kitty. Oh, you can't see him right now. You probably see his tail here. Here's his tail. This is Vincent, Vinny, the kitty cat. He's a ginger, just like Vincent Van Gogh. There you are. Hi. You want to look at the camera? Look over here. Turn around. Look over here. No. Okay, Bubby. He's super lovable, aren't you? Don't kiss me, Daddy. I don't like kisses. Too bad. I'm going to give you kisses anyway. Give me kisses. Yes. I like that Chris guy, though, you know, but he just gets too involved in his cats and just stops painting and everything goes out the window. As soon as his cats come up there, it's all about loving on cats after that. I was deep into learning something and now he's just sitting there loving on his kitty cats. Sorry, not sorry. You know, what I'm feeling like is this width here compared to, okay, that's where it's at. Oh my goodness, my brain just died. I'm trying to talk, but not. Okay, so the fabric, the way it's wrapped around the figure, I got that angle wrong. It goes this way. It cuts in a little bit more, right? And it's got that cool highlight on it too. So that's a bit better. I think that's where it needs to be. I don't want to get that highlight all the way down. But even then, I think everything needed to move over, honestly. I'm going to do a measurement of where the tip of this fabric needs to go in relation to the hole. So halfway, it's to the right of the halfway point. I think halfway is right there. Nope. Just general. It doesn't need to be exact, but this will give me a better understanding. So to the right of there, oof, yeah, it should be like right here and then at that angle. That would give me more sleeve to have fun with too. So this is what I'm talking about. I really like all this stuff that I did, but now I'm going to destroy it. Now it's going to be right here, the top of that fabric where it meets the shoulder, and then the angle is, I need to get this right. The angle is the same as what I did below it. Goes up in there. Yeah. I like that because, and I'm going to scrape all this out. I like that now because it gives me more of the focal point, which is the fabric on that shoulder. And more of that to play around with. I like that better. So let's get back to... Yeah, this is what I have to deal with. Yeah. He's hungry and he's pawing at my head. I know. No, no, no. Not yet. I am so deep into this. I am like on the verge of making huge... Yeah, you don't care. You're just going to hit me in the head. Very big changes with this painting, Vincent. Are you channeling Van Gogh when you're saying, just calm down, Daddy. Calm down. It's okay. You'll get it right. You know, you need to be more expressive, Daddy, like Van Gogh. Stop being so uptight. Okay, so that really changes the placement of everything there. I like that better. Honestly, I do. Need to go closer into this gray, a little bit darker as well. More black to gray it out than white to bring it back up. To get closer to what I had on there before. And I'll be able to manipulate everything that I have on there right now within subsequent sessions on this painting to bring that back. But the important part is, does that bring the back? Does it bring the back of the figure in line as far as the drawing is concerned? No, not that brush. That was a brush I just had. About that brush. There we go. And that's what is really causing some issues, is the drawing of this back. So going back to the back. Oh my gosh, the way I'm wording everything is terrible, right? Okay, so I'm going back to bigger shapes on the back. Are you confused yet? I'm confused. That's another part of this stream, is figuring out the best ways to speak about this complex painting thing. Thinking about these simple shapes of the shadows. I got so much paint on here that what I'm putting down is blending with what's already down there. I've removed even caring about the differences in temperature with these paints. If it's a bit off, that's okay in these colors. Now I'm thinking again about value, value first. I can get that temperature back, but drawing first, and then these, drawing within these shadow shapes, and then making sure that the darkness of that value is where it needs to be. That muscle there goes down that way. And this muscle will not survive to the end of the painting. I'm using it to give me a better understanding of how the back moves through space. Like, I'm so deep into this right now that I'm not keeping up with talking constantly. And my kitty here, Mr. Vincent, is not helping me stay focused. Do you want to just purr? Let's just do a whole stream, me and you. You're purring into the mic. And yeah, that's it. Oh, Michael Horzella. Sorry, didn't see your comment. I was so deep into this. Hi, fingers crossed for drawing this back. What if you want to continue tomorrow? If it's half dry, would you put it into the fridge to stop drying? No, no. I like you could do something like put it into the fridge or freezer, like your palette or something to stop it from drying. But I'll prepare. It's a good question. It's a really good question. What I'll do is I'll prepare for it to be dry. Specifically, all about edges for me. Like I'll get this general idea of coloration and value and things like that, this general idea of where the painting's going. And the one thing that I know out of like the decades of painting that I've done is if it dries with hard edges everywhere, it's really hard to soften those again. Even harder in like acrylic and stuff like that. Super hard to bring hard edges softer after it's already dry. But that's 90% of the painting process. But what I'll do is make sure that in a lot of places, those edges are really soft first, let it dry, let it set up. So it's pretty much set by tomorrow. And then I can reharden those edges if I need to on subsequent sessions. But what you'll find most of the time, and you can see this by looking at like master artists, right, that you think are super detailed painters with hard edges everywhere. Then you begin to look at the paint and look at how they treat edges all over the place. And the majority of them are very just soft everywhere. And so most of the time I'll try and prepare for that by softening everything down and then end up keeping all of those soft edges for the most part. So I prepare for the dryness, for it to happen. And also I think, because when we talk about drying, when we talk about like color mixing, there is, for lack of a better term, there's a bit of laziness there that we have as artists, and I think laziness is good in some ways, so we're not repeating ourselves all the time. But there's a tendency for us to not want to remix colors, right? To think, oh my gosh, can I just keep those colors really wet so I don't have to remix them? We don't have that faith in ourselves, that trust in ourselves to be able to bring those exact same colors back. So we want to save all of our paints. We want to keep it from drying for a very long time, just so we don't have to remix those colors. I would say never to do that. Force yourself to remix colors, to do that more often. The more you learn how to make mixtures over and over and over and over again, the easier it'll be on you, because you're like, oh, I can get that back, no problem, because I've done it so many times. Yeah, you're going to mess up some colors at the beginning. You're going to, fail at that sometimes, but that's part of getting better anyways. Fail, improve. Fail, get feedback, improve. This is part of the game. So will I try and save this? No, it's going to sit here until tomorrow in the exact same place it is. I know how it's going to dry as well. Does that need to come up? I know how it's going to dry, how much it's going to be dry tomorrow, and where it's going to be dry, because I've dealt with these colors, this palette, for so long. Like this whole back area is going to be dry tomorrow because I'm dealing with a lot of the ivory black and cad red with yellow ochre and not a ton of white in it. The titanium whites are the whites that take forever to dry. Like everything up in this lighter area won't be dry, but 90% of this painting is going to be dry. I haven't really used a ton of white, honestly. Okay, Hi. You're in my way. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to get down. Okay. Let's get down. Be a good boy. Okay. Love my kitties. It's like Hunchback. What am I doing? Okay, good. Glad that was helpful, Michael. Mikhail. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Horzella. Fantastic name. Yeah, so I'm really not liking the shape of this back. Not liking that at all. See how hard edge that is? And then right here, I want that to be a lot softer. I'll probably soften out all of this like palette knife that I pulled out the paint all the way down to there. Soften that out to prepare for tomorrow. It's this the subtle change here between these two lines. Like I feel like this contour and that contour is good, but that's not working. Bam, bam. What is happening? What's happening there? I need to figure that out. I need to figure this out before I stop for the day. Let's try this. You know what? Let's try. First off, I'm going to soften what I said here. Soften this out. Just get rid of it. Get rid of it. I'm going to bring that back with white paint. As soon as when I get up to here, I'll probably leave some of that hard edge. I want the hard edge there, but not there. This part here, I'm going to soften. Soften. Soft, soft, soft. That's soft enough. Right there needs to be softer. Actually, I need to just pull that paint off as much as I can. Let's just scrape it off because we're getting into the lighter value there. Get rid of there. Go away. Go away. Then I can come in with my lighter brush that doesn't have any paint on it and pull most of that off and soften it. So what I want to try on that back now, that will hopefully help me understand what's going on, is remove that edge. It's so harsh and so there that I think it's just too exact. And the corner of that brush is not doing what I want. Sorry, I got to make sure that I move the mic so you can hear me. I'm probably being too soft all the time. I need a round brush. I have so many flat brushes. I love working in flats, but when I really want to soften something, I use these kind of rounded brushes, but I want something bigger. So I'm going to just really kill this brush, really fan that out. See, look at that. Now I can get something super soft, right? Super subtle. It's okay. All that paint is getting into the background. It's okay. I can bring it back. Not a big deal. I know how to do that. But I wanted to soften that to see kind of what it's telling me. That doesn't make any sense. What do you mean, Chris, by what it's telling you? It's almost like starting over, right, in that area. I know the hard edge for that back that I have is incorrect in some way. You know, my focal point, oops, I just painted the mic. My focal point is this area here, like the folds on the fabric going over the arm and then the shoulder, and the back should fade off anyways. So maybe I should just be lazy and fade that off, right? Does it look better that way? Can I be lazy? Not worry about that drawing and just like fade it back? You know, probably fade it back. Take that back and fade it back. How many times I'm using the word back here is ridiculous. The limitation that I have with the English language is scary sad. I used to work with an international company. I would work with people from all over the world, and most of them were, English as a second language, and they spoke it and knew English better than I did. As a native English speaker, it was, facepalm moments all over the place. Okay. So just thinking about basic values here, not all those lumps, just, the back is just full of lumps, right? Tons of freaking muscles that are just like, what is that? Oh, it just looks like I'm nothing but bumps. I can't understand it, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm just focusing on that contour, trying to get it to look not like a misshapen back that's going to distract away from the whole painting. Like it can fade back there. It can be nothing. It's not the focus of the painting, but it can also not be distracting. We need to make sure that it like, oh, it looks kind of weird, you know. Like I love I don't want at the end of the painting to go, I love the focal point, which is the folds within the fabric going down on that arm, but the back distracts away from the whole thing and looks terrible. That's what I don't want to happen. What about that angle? It's just not working. Not working. Man, what's going on? It is kicking my butt. This is kicking my butt. Oh my God, it's kicking my butt. How are you kicking my butt so hard? Just a simple thing. It could be that everybody's watching this, or the two people that are watching this is like, it looks fine. What are you talking about, Chris? No, it doesn't look fine. It's got issues. I got to deal with that. Probably more likely that I have issues. The back looks fine. It's your own issues that you're dealing with, Chris. That's maybe what it is. You know, a lot of times I've noticed that when we're painting and we're thinking, it's a drawing issue, maybe with that contour or whatever. And especially, I see this a lot in faces, doing portraits and things like that. Oh, it just looks off. And then you could do like digital means to do an overlay of the reference directly on your painting and see that like the eyes and everything, the nose, all of the contours of the internals of the face just fit perfectly. They're right on. They're exactly where they need to be. But it does not look like the person. It's off. It's off in some way. And that refers to like how all those subtle values are describing the form of the head. And I think maybe the same could be happening there, where it's not the contour, but the subtle values describing the internals of that form. Maybe. And I could be way off on that. Like it could be just the contour. But I've worked so much on this stupid contour to a point where the paint is too thick back there and it's starting to get labored, right? That it's frustrating. What about that? Oh, that's better. That feels better. Why? Why does it feel better? Oh, I went too far into right there. I'm sitting back looking at the digital version of this on the stream. Always gives me a better understanding of where I need to go. Seeing your painting digitally is always, I think the ultimate separator between you and your artwork, where you get so close to it that you can't see what's good and what's bad or anything about it. But look at it digitally and really kind of separates you from the whole thing. Oof, 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 oof. Hey Matthew, how you doing? Good seeing you again. Or looking at your words again. I'm here watching while working. You're not finished. I don't like to comment until it's finished. I do like how the lights of the fabric glow. Thank you. I can understand that. Um because I'll comment on somebody's work and I'll say, well, that area doesn't look so good because of blah blah blah, and they're like, oh, well, that's not even, I haven't even touched that yet. Like, oh, okay. So I'll shut up. But the idea is getting, like, if I told you that that area was finished, because it might be, you know, when you're trying to paint expressively and simply, these initial strokes can last to the very end. And some of those initial strokes are the best strokes you can make with an entire painting because they're put down confidently and expressively right at the beginning. And it's like that can survive through the whole thing because, you know, I channeled my John Singer Sargent, which John Singer Sargent never did it in one stroke anyways. He did like that same stroke like 50 times. But making it look like it was just, you know, tossed off in a masterful way. So that might happen. Some of this might come through to the end of the painting. Not sure. As much as I'm beating it to death right now, probably not. I'm going to try and lighten up this turn of the back. Okay. Yeah, that did not help it. Lightening that up? No. Bad. Bad, Chris. You know, just all about the block in. You know, this is probably the longest block in that I've ever worked on. Probably not, but I need to get away from it. I'm going to step away just for a second. Okay. Yeah, that was somewhat helpful. Stepping back from your work. That's the problem with sitting all the time. You get too close to it. You're like, oh man, this is the best painting ever. And then, you know, a minute later, you step back and all of a sudden you think, you know, who came into this room and destroyed this painting from the seconds it took me to stand up and get out of my seat. Because when I was sitting down, it was beautiful. Now I'm standing up and it's, you know, awful. Frankenstein's monster, right? Oof, I'm doing these strokes, these like willy-nilly strokes that are just messing up everything. Okay, I will say it looks like the back of the shoulder is more angular as it connects to the back that the way you painted it. Oh, then the way that I painted it. And you make the adjustments right after I commented. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. And then right after that, I screw up those same adjustments by, you know, changing something else. There's probably been moments when it's looked great and I've just kept playing with it. I'm at a point now where I'm keeping it soft. Softening things out, keeping it soft to where I'm preparing for tomorrow's session on this painting to get deeper into the detail and then letting my brain work on it while I'm sleeping. And then hopefully I'll wake up in the morning and the light bulb will hit my brain. You know, lightning will have struck my brain and I'm like, oh, that's what it needs. And then just do it. Or, you know, what's possible, definitely possible, is that it's just going to turn out to be a terrible painting. Or the painting will look pretty good, but the back will be this big distracting thing that I'll hate tremendously. And I'll just move on to the next painting after I finish this one and go, you know what did I learn there? And figure that out. And that's part of the whole process. You know what I'm going to do? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you this process. How can you take digital And, you know, I could probably create a whole video on this. Okay, I'm going to take some photos of this. Now, this is going to be uploaded from my phone using Google Photos or Google Drive. No, actually, it goes to Google Photos. So it's going to be uploaded to the server on Google Photos right now. That picture I just took. And now I'm going to be moving away from the chat, so I won't see your chats, but just watch what I'm going to be doing here, okay? It's interesting. Now I'm going to check this drawing exactly, and I'm going to show you the whole process you need to go through in order for that to happen. So here's the photo. Download this. That's the painting I'm just working on, okay? Daily art photos 2026 June. Today is the 16th, right? Yeah. Look how organized I am. 4,890 days in a row, guys. Isn't that awesome? So I'll download these to that folder. And then I'm going to open up Photoshop. Oh, you're not seeing this. I need to show my screen. Probably good, because then you didn't see all of my personal photos and things like that. So open up that. And this is the photo. I'm going to open up in Photoshop. Okay. That's the painting that I'm working on, and oof, like that feels terrible. Like it doesn't feel right. The back looks terrible. So then I'll open up my reference. So go back into projects. This is called flaring, and this is the JPEG for it right here. Okay, so this is the original back. And I know that my paper is 6x9 and the reference is 6x9. So what I'm going to do is Control-Shift-A, and this is going to take me into the camera raw settings. And then there's this little icon here. I'm moving quickly through this, okay? It's not a complete tutorial. And I'm going to be using this kind of guided straightening thing. This is the main reason why I use Photoshop and Lightroom and not any other software out there, because there's no other software I know that does these kind of guided edges to straighten up everything. You probably know something out there, but I don't, so that's okay. So I've straightened up the edges. It's perfectly square now. Now I'll do a crop to 6x9 to make sure it's the same ratio as well. Because sometimes when you do that, the ratio is off a little bit, and I may need to stretch this just a tiny bit, I think, to get it really close. Yeah, I need to stretch it wide. And what I'm doing right now, why are you doing this, Chris? What I'm doing is I'm getting the painting that I'm working on perfectly 6x9, like the reference, and the exact same ratio. And then I'll take this, Control-Alt, Control-C, copy it, and I'm going to paste it over my reference. And let's zoom out a bit. Okay, you can see it's pasted over. Now I could do this thing, and that's helpful too, to see where things are on and off. You can see that, how I'm like going like deep comparison into my painting versus, and actually I needed to, my painting is a bit bigger. There it is. That's a bit better. Needs to go there. Get those edges perfectly on. Okay, now do it. Okay, it's not as off as I was thinking it was. Like, holy crap, it was way off before. So what you can do now is you can create a new layer. And I'm doing this all with my brush. I'm going to take, or all with my mouse. My goodness, all with my brush. And I'm going to get this like nice blue color, this kind of blue. But I want a very small brush, very hard brush. So even smaller than 36 pixels. So yes, much smaller than that. Okay, I don't know why you're complaining at me. Just a line, even smaller than that. And I'm going to zoom in. Let's go Control-1 to zoom in really far. And I'm just going to focus on this back. I'm 100% cheating here. There is no cheating in art, by the way. I'm joking. There's a shadow there that I'm actually outlining too. A shadow from the hair onto the shoulder. And does it have to be perfectly on that contour? No. So this is on a brand new layer. I know, baby. My kitty's meowing at me. Why aren't you paying attention to me? I'm starving. You're not starving. I fed you and gave you a snack, and you're overweight. So now he's really sad. I called him fat. Sad kitten. So you can see that I outlined that on a new layer. And I turned off the layer of my painting. Now let's turn the painting layer back on. Bam. You see that? I can even change the saturate or the opacity on it. I'm pretty close on that. Come on, puppy. My cat is like, Vincent, you're in my way. I'm busy. Let me back out. So this is what I can do. A process. And actually, I want to see where the hair is as well. So the hair is about here, there, and, just quickly, this is basically where the face is. Got that little bit of the neck, just quickly kind of throwing that in. The rest of this is all here and here. I don't like to rely on this so heavily, because it could be a point where we could use all these tools. I'm happy with where the face is. I'm happy with where all that is. It's this angle. Look, like I got that angle there, but it's a little bit off. So close. Yeah, it's so close. So I can see where my drawing is off by comparing it exactly digitally with my painting. And yeah, this whole art, the folds and things are way off. I don't care about that. I could change that up, a million different ways and it would still look fine. And I wanted to express it further out anyways, but it's this part of the back, that little contour there, where the big problem is. Like right where it transitions here down is where I need to get correct on the painting. So yeah. Okay. Let me go back to art and face. Looks like the folds are tighter in the reference. All of the folds distinctly point to the lower right where they radiate from. Some of your folds are going different angles. Ooh, let me look at that. Let's I'm going to erase this one. Or am I not erasing it? Oh, it's only 39%. Maybe go away. Erase that one, go back to that. And again, these folds could go a million different ways and it would still look like folds on the painting. They don't have to, I'm not going to get into all of this little stuff that's happening in here. We're thinking about the bigger shapes, and I like the idea of what you said there, which was the major angles, like where they radiate from. That's important. That's important to me. How thick each one is and the specifics between each and every fold and how it moves through space. Don't really care much about. Where does this back kind of do this thing? That shadow shape. And see, this is where it gets dangerous, because then you start doing this and you usurp all of your learning by leaning too heavily upon digital means. But anyway. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe down here with the folds that I have are a little bit different, but I'm happy with where they're at on the painting, honestly. Maybe a couple down here not radiating right, but I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the shadow shapes on the back, even where I split it there. It's just, like I said, that angle right there needs to change. Okay. Wait, did I not even show my screen on that? Oh, I'm sorry. Switching back and forth. Here's the screen that I did. Okay, so I outlined the folds like that. And even in the back of it, and that's where I was, and in the back of the figure, that's why I was saying be careful of, utilizing the digital means too much on this. But yeah, I like the angles that I have on the folds, what's there right now. I'll get deep into the details of that, or deeper, but not super deep into the details. And I like where the uh, sleeve of the folds and everything is pushed out further to the left. I think I want that. I want it longer that way, where it ends further to the left. I could probably even push it out more if I wanted to. Okay, let's get back to changing that up. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at where that blue line was. Am I showing the right thing? Yeah, I'm showing the right thing now. Maybe the fact that you don't have the head in makes the back look strange. No, I want the head pushed back. Like that head, the value, like look at the value compression or the value comparison between the hair and the background. It's like right there. And then squint your eyes and look at the head, like the profile of the figure with the background. It is so close to the background color, a little bit lighter and definitely warmer. And I want them even closer. It's not about the head. It's about what you said at the very beginning when you came in here, Matthew, is all about liking the sleeve of that fabric. That's what this entire painting is about. I don't need to do all of the information. It's important that for me at least, it's important that we're telling a story, I think, more than just copying what we're looking at. And I know you teach as well, Matt. I don't know if it's Matt or Matthew. Well, you say Matthew, so I'm gonna say Matthew. But it's this slight difference in angle here, and I'm actually looking at the photo that I just took. And that's probably too light. I want to darken it up a bit. I'm actually looking at the adjustment that I made over my painting and trying to get that better. Let's look at what I did. And this is kind of what I was saying before. Like, I'm so close on the drawing of that contour. Yeah, it's not as sharp as the contour that's in the photo. I don't want it that sharp anyways. I want it soft. But it could be not just about the contour and more about how the value difference in the form is describing so much that is telling me, hey, this looks weird. This looks different and weird in some way. It's confusing me. What do you mean, Chris, that you're not painting things perfectly right away? Every other artist out there paints it wonderfully the very first time. No, they don't. They just don't show you all the messes. They don't show you all the bad paintings that they've done. They're afraid. Okay. Got it. Thanks. I do prefer Matthew. Oh, awesome. Great. I'm glad you're here, Matthew. Thank you. I'm going to be okay with that back the where it is right now. I am, the one thing I do know after trying to do that contour a little bit more right now is I preferred when it was a lot softer. So I'm going to really soften this out. There you go. There's the lazy way of doing it. Okay. I mean, it's not lazy. It's more like, I'm making this, I'm making excuses, right? But I'm I'm making a concerted effort to push that back because yes, it may not look right. So I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to send it back. I'm going to soften that edge. That way the drawing is kind of hidden in the background. Is it the most important thing in this painting? No, I've already established what the most important thing in this painting is. Like if I was having a trouble with all of this area as far as the drawing is concerned, which I may in the future, I would sit here and make sure it's right on, because that is what decides this painting is good or bad, or at least meets my criteria or not. Hey, kitty. Vincent, you gotta get down, okay? After I'm done, I'm done. Poor kitty. I should pay attention to him more. He's more important than all you people. Because, you know, he's family, right? You can understand that. Let me give you an example of where it can kind of stink of laziness, or it can be, a better choice for the painting. So years and years ago, when I lived in Florida, me and a friend of mine would always go plein air painting. Had so much fun. Another Chris Brown, if you're ever watching this, miss you, man. It was really awesome painting with you back in the day. It was fantastic. I was probably a horrible person then. Sorry. Better now, hopefully. Anyway, let's not get into that. But we were painting, and one day we decided to just sit down and start painting, like outside of his apartment. And we were looking at a parking lot with a bunch of cars. We didn't care. We just wanted to start painting. We didn't care about subject. We were just out there. And the place where we set up was really interesting, because almost like after the block in, we noticed this stop sign. Okay. And when you think stop signs, you're thinking a stop sign like facing you, right? It says stop. You can see the words, it says stop on it. But what if you take those stop signs, right, and you turn them on their edge like that, right? Like you're looking at it from the side, it turns into just a black stick. And so we're doing this landscape with all these cars and stuff. And then right in the center, a little bit to the left of the composition, was this stop sign. And when you looked at it, it was just a black stick. That's all it was. That's all you could see. And now if I took a picture of this, people would go, oh, that's a sign. I don't know what sign it is, but we know it's a sign, because photographs will have so much more information than we can do in paint, unless you're just hyper photorealistic, right? We decided to ignore that stop sign, just to not put it there. It's like when you're doing life drawing and you're behind the light that is lighting the figure, and there's a pole there from that light. You can just kind of go left and right and ignore it and delete it in your brain and draw a beautiful figure, right? But you intentionally say, I know that looks good in person. I know it's understandable what it is in person, right? But if I paint that, it's going to look like a big stick. It's going to look like something weird. So I'm making this concerted effort to stay away from that. My friend Michael Orwick, I asked him once about trees, because he does landscape painting. Amazing landscape painter. Orwick, Orwick. Check him out. And I asked him, I was like, I painted landscapes a bunch of times, and there's a lot of times you get to these trees that have like super tiny leaves and 10 trillion like just unlimited amount of these trees. And they're just, I call them fluffy trees. They have so many leaves in them, and they're so generalized that you can't pull out like sun could be hitting them, and there's no specific light and dark shape, no form to them. They're just fluffy. Like even clouds have more form than this tree does. And I know you've probably seen some trees like this if you've done landscape painting. And I said, Mike, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with those trees? And his answer, I don't. I ignore them, or I don't paint them intentionally. There you go. I mean, talk about possibilities. You don't have to be so beholden. You don't have to be so referential or reference what you're painting all the time to a point where you're making a painting that is not near as strong just because you have this idea that it's in front of you and you must paint it, right? So that is my long-winded excuse for softening out what I don't think looks good on that back. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I can't draw it well. It has everything to do with the fact that I can't draw that well, that I'm having a lot of trouble with the drawing of it. Ooh, let's look at the painting in 4K. So I like doing this at the end of the stream because I record on this camera in 1080p, right? And I could even zoom in. If it'll focus. And I would love to record, have that going in 4K all the time, but most cameras will overheat after 30 minutes, or they have like a limit because of heat of recording in 4K. So you can't do it. You only have like so much time. And I'm not going to spend a couple $1,000s on a camera that does 4K, 6K, and 8K with no limit on recording. But I want to do, come on, stop changing your focus. I like doing it in 4K because at the end you can kind of see all the details and things that maybe I see a bit more exact. Yeah. All right, that's the end of this session on the painting. I'm going to leave all these hard edges within that and play with them. Everything else is soft enough to prepare when this painting dries a bit by tomorrow. Most of this will be completely dry by tomorrow, all except for like the lighter areas where the whiter paint is. I mean, I scraped back to the paper on that. Yeah, I'm liking where it's at so far, except for that back is really killing me. It's still killing me. Ugh, still killing me. Anyway, I've been streaming for 2 hours plus, I think. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Go to my website, chrisbevan.com. It's right down there in the bottom left, chrisbevan.com. Bam. Boop. If you know my name, you know my website. Yeah, check out all my artwork there. I sell my artwork there. I'm building an online learning platform called The Painter's Path and been working on that like crazy. I'm going to be releasing that soon. It's going to have some videos in it, so check that out when that comes out. Other than that, I try to stream in the mornings, like some indiscriminate amount of time in the mornings. Usually it's like 8, 9, 10, 11 a.m. in the morning, that kind of thing. So I'll be here, Twitch and YouTube. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And thanks for all your comments, guys. Bye-bye. Ooh, look at the end stream. I finally made, this. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.